Thank you for joining me on my soapbox today. My name is Mindy Prefling, and I am the Client Services Senior Manager for Spencer Ogden, a global energy and infrastructure recruitment agency. As global recruitment experts in energy and infrastructure, we're building an industry that impacts millions. We provide leading recruitment services to our clients and candidates, creating careers to power a sustainable future. The Soapbox series is a podcast we've launched to have open discussions with thought leaders in the renewable energy industry to discuss the human element behind our industry and the challenges we face in recruiting, retaining, and promoting top talent, especially as it pertains to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Today's guest is Taylor Dodson, the manager of Utility Scale Interconnection for SOLV Energy, formerly known as Swinnerton Renewable Energy and SOLV Inc. The two divisions have been rebranded into a single company, SOLV Energy, under a new owner private equity firm, American Securities. SOLV Energy provides engineering, procurement, and construction, EPC, and operations and maintenance, O&M, services for solar PV facilities in the US. SOLV's mission is to make a positive difference wherever they go through projects that generate good energy for people and the planet. They are ranked as the top solar EPC in the United States. On today's episode, Taylor talks about his longstanding career, the need for labor and renewables, and his drive to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion within his organization. He offers insightful statistics on how the renewable energy sector is going to grow by 30 to 50% each year, with the market doubling and tripling in size. We also discuss common challenges in the sector and how SOLV Energy is facing them head on. Taylor, thank you for joining me on my soapbox today. I'd love to have you kick us off with a brief introduction to you and to SOLV Energy.
Hey, Mindy, thank you for that. I'm Taylor Dodson, a professional engineer, an electrical engineer graduate from NC State, go Wolfpack. I've spent the last 17 years focused on transmission and distribution projects, predominantly in the power generation space. I was fortunate enough to join SOLV Energy in 2014 when I opened an office in Raleigh for SOLV, focused on high voltage interconnection and supporting our O&M business practices as well. SOLV Energy has roots dating back to 1888 from our previous parent company, Swinnerton Builders. This powerful legacy has allowed us to branch out and focus on renewable energy initiatives in 2008 and have since grown to be the #1 utility scale solar EPC and O&M provider.
That's awesome. I want to take some time as we go through this episode together to talk more about SOLV Energy and even Swinnerton Renewables. But before we do that, I'd love to speak a little bit more about you and your history. So if you could take us back even prior to joining SOLV Energy, I think you said in 2014, let's go back to college. What did you study? What did you get your degree in? And did you know what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I've always been into power. Started with car audio back in high school. I had a custom car audio business installing solar head units in parking lots. So went to NC State for electrical engineering. I double majored in computer engineering and did some programming and found out that I preferred to build things rather than program things. I still dabble in programming on the side, but predominantly I enjoy seeing my creations come to life in the real world. So I started right after my freshman year at ABB in 2004, working with their T&D group, doing transmission distribution substations. So in that same year, began working on some wind farms in Hawaii, doing substation protection and control design and drafting, and really fell in love with the renewable space. I'd always been passionate about changing the diet of our power grid off of fossil fuels, and got the opportunity to volunteer with NC Green Power, a nonprofit that pushed subsidization of solar facilities early on to really push residential solar. So that was one aspect. Then the T&D work with ABB led to me working with Dashiell out of college, and I got my professional engineer license while working at Dashiell, and ultimately was a subcontractor for Swinnerton Renewable Energy, now SOLV Energy. And really fell in love with the team, the processes. There was really low overhead. Everything that was asked of a subcontractor was necessary to do the job. No extra paperwork or rigmarole to get through. And ultimately, they asked if I'd like to join the team, and I really didn't have any expectations of that at the completion of the job, but ended up opening an office in Raleigh for them and focusing on interconnection. So went from project management to business operations and hiring out a team, building that group to really approach and the needs of renewable projects and interconnection.
Great. Thank you for that background. Is that common to be a subcontractor for a company and then to be brought on permanent? I've seen that a few times just in recruitment, but I'm curious.
It happens. It's not preferred by the subcontractor company. So, sorry, Tom, for that. But really, we still work with Dashiell. Often we just did a large project in California. They're an outstanding contractor and one that we enjoy working with quite a bit.
Cool. Okay, so I think what's really unique about your career, Taylor, is that in your 17 years of professional history, you've only worked with 3 companies. Any more people are moving companies every 1 to 3 years. So you were staying with your organizations for 7 or 8 in some cases. What do you think is the secret to your success and longevity?
Well, I think that goes back to my family and really the dedication and devotion that we share. It's important to give it your all. I've always been taught to do that, and I like to practice that. And so every career change that I've made has been very difficult to do. And I would love to retire from SOLV Energy. I think that it's an incredible group, and you really get a lot of benefit from building that kind of longevity with an organization, especially if there's churn, because you get to know everyone and you have the ability to make meaningful impacts within an organization the longer you're there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have a similar approach to my career, and even though things aren't always perfect or great, just like in a family, over time you benefit from kind of sticking it out together and coming out the other side together. So I can appreciate that.
For sure.
So I'd like to, in a moment, we'll talk about the present day, what you're doing for SOLV Energy. But when you first joined, you mentioned you went from a project manager to business operations, I think is what you said. Could you talk a little bit about your entree into SOLV Energy and how your role has evolved over the years?
Yeah, my approach is not a typical one. I probably put my fingers in every single pie in the organization just to really get an understanding of the inner workings of the group and figure out where the most support was needed. And the initial onboarding was to help with improving subcontractors in the high voltage space, improve engineering support there, and support our operation and maintenance efforts in those areas as well. So really just with every finger that was in there, I would prop up each finger with a different role and get new people onboarded to support those and grow them up. And really, I am a major subscriber to servant leadership. So I don't see myself as a boss. I work for the organization and for the people in the organization. And really, the most effective thing I can do is remove barriers for my teammates and make sure that they have what they need to be successful.
You strike me as a real asset to any organization that you join, just in the way that you really drink the Kool-Aid, and also the servant leadership piece that you mentioned. I think that's unique, truly.
I think we have a lot of servant leaders within SOLV Energy. So I'm proud to be one of many that do that within this organization, but thank you, Mindy.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear more about the rebrand to SOLV Energy. If you could share with us what prompted the rebrand and also what it means for SOLV Energy.
Sure. So really, as a market leader before the rebrand, we're looking to maintain that position with the way that things are looking for the next decade plus. Renewable energies are going to grow year over year, 30 to 50% each year, with market doubling and tripling in size. And with our current market position of anywhere from 10 to 20% of the business, in order to maintain that position, significant investment was necessary. And I think we found a great partner with American Securities to really push us over that envelope and give us the shove in the right direction to be able to stand up as our own company, to invest in our people, our equipment, and our company as a whole, to be able to chase that market position and really focus on both EPC and O&M leadership within the renewable space.
Yeah, I can see, just from where I sit, working in talent acquisition with client companies like SOLV Energy and the like, agreed the year-on-year growth expectation is pretty phenomenal, what we're expecting. So I can see why this is a really strategic move then for American Securities and for SOLV Energy, as you've described. So I'd like to understand a little bit more about your team. How big is your team now? What's the makeup of your team?
Yeah, so I lead a team of HV project managers, project engineers, field operation manager, and HV construction professionals. And I partner with Rob Shuck, who's the leader of our HV testing group and O&M field technicians, as well as partnering with our pre-construction group led by a longtime friend, Justin Joyce. So our team is spread out across the country with many of the high voltage pre-construction and operations folks based out of Raleigh. And then our construction folks spread out across our job sites, and some based here in Colorado with me, and others California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Minnesota, all around the country, so that we're nimble and can remobilize wherever the skills are necessary.
Okay, and of that team of high voltage project managers, project engineers, field engineers, and what was the last one? Did you say high voltage?
Construction professionals. So
construction professionals.
And electricians, operators, field ops, senior superintendents, and linemen as well.
Great. So of those folks, I mean, how many headcount are we talking about directly?
Oh, I think we're up to 17 in our construction group, and 11 in operations, and 5 in pre-construction.
Great. So with that, so we're talking about a team inclusive of the pre-construction team that you partner with, anywhere from like 20, 25 folks, it sounds like. And with the expected growth that we talked about earlier, 30 to 50% year-on-year growth, how do you see your team evolving? Do you see a lot more headcount being needed, or people taking on more responsibilities?
So we've really tried to get ahead of this and structure the team in a manner that each job doesn't require an additional person to be able to manage it. But there will absolutely be growth in our teams to be able to support this, but it's probably, at 30%, because as we see the overall project mix grow, we're seeing larger and larger projects. So it's fewer overall interconnections to manage, but more time involved in 500 kV or 345 kV projects with, multi-mile transmission lines, interconnections that require, more time, less projects per person, but there will be growth overall for both project management, project engineers. We're really trying to grow the next generation of project managers from within our organization and focus in on getting more support for our current project managers, and focus in on more entry level to 3 to 5 year experience project engineers, senior project engineers to support the team growth.
Great. So it sounds like with the workload, your workload is increasing just by virtue of the projects being larger and more complex. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's true. Also, we are seeing more total projects heading into 22, 23. So there's preparation for those as well with our teams to make sure that we're giving our clients the best service possible. We don't want to put an unsupervised new hire on a job. So we have to give them enough support so that they get the skills they need to be successful and build their own career, so that it's, the whole team approach.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like you're kind of taking a multi-pronged approach, identifying the folks internally, maybe in existing PM or senior project manager positions, and empowering them to take on more responsibility, and then bring in some more entry-level talent and train them up with the previous mentioned cohort of project managers and senior project managers.
Absolutely.
Cool. So what challenges are you facing with that growth and with that development on your team?
Well, I mean, the primary challenge is labor.
Mm-hmm.
We need more of it, and we want the best of the best, which everyone out that's recruiting is after that same labor pool. So, I'm excited to talk about how we expand that pool and how we get the best talent possible.
I love it. Let's talk about that. How do you have any ideas of how we can expand that pool?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion is certainly one thing that's near and dear to my heart. Also, word of mouth referrals and working with talented recruiters like Spencer Ogden is another way that we're looking to expand this. Again, a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, agreed. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece, because that's why I reached out to you about this podcast, because I know this is something that's really important to you. And I know you've personally taken on a lot of opportunities internally at SOLV Energy to identify ways to increase diversity within your organization. I want to talk more about that, but before we do, I want to hear what your thoughts are with regard to how the industry is doing with diversity. How do you feel like renewables is doing as it pertains to diversity?
Well, I know that I think you shared with me that there was a survey saying that 50% of respondents said that nothing had changed in there. And we see just the opposite of that within SOLV Energy. We're focused on strengthening diversity, equity, and inclusion through environmental justice by providing diverse and equitable opportunities for students, the communities we work in, our suppliers, our workforce, and our leadership teams. So looking over some statistics within our company, which, you can't say where you are without monitoring these things, but they can't be the end all be all, because it's more inclusive than that. You've got to look at the communities that you're working in and otherwise, but you still have to track where you're at, to set goals and be able to track your progress towards those goals. So at the end of 2020, we were at around 30% minorities within our group. We're at 27% female within our EPC group, slightly lower within our operation and maintenance team. So we've got a good foundation to build off on, but we really need to focus on improving those numbers, not just from the number standpoint, but from the people standpoint, and really gaining the efficiencies that you see from having a more diverse workforce, and both from race, ethnicity standpoint, and male, female, other within the organization, to make sure that we are the strongest team possible.
Yeah, I love that. You want to improve your numbers, not just from a number standpoint, but from a people standpoint. This sounds so simple in concept, but in practice, it's really hard, I think, especially for corporations that have good intentions and they put out, corporate, benchmarks, right? Here's what we want to be. We want X percentage of female or people of color, or whatever the case may be. But then in practice, maybe how that trickles down to the leadership team or the management team that's actually out in the field trying to hire people while also getting their day job done. It's not always, it's not easy. So shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. People just want to hire as quickly as possible. But I agree with your point earlier. We've got a real opportunity here right now with the growth in the industry to hire more diverse folks in. So I really appreciate your commitment to that and SOLV Energy's commitment to that.
Absolutely.
So moving forward from there, I guess you talked a little bit about, big picture, you have some different programs in place. You said with, it sounds like school organizations, even with suppliers, maybe you have certain suppliers that you look to work with that meet diversity goals, or could you talk a little bit more about that? Do you have more information on these programs?
Sure. Yeah. Stephanie Don is leading up our diversity and supplier roadmap, where we're really looking for more inclusive programs. We've established an incredible relationship with Navajo Nation. We built the Kayenta 2 project on the reservation in 2018, and have really taken a community first approach with Navajo Nation in particular, where we are doing CSR goals and initiatives with them, where we've worked with several folks. Goal Zero has partnered with us to get products out to Navajo Nation folks, as well as working with Milo Fowler, SEI, and the Heart of America Foundation to create and distribute 8,500 distance learning kits. We worked in partnership with the local school board to get those distributed during COVID times on the reservation. And we actually won a Cleanie at SPI for that work in 2020. We're also working with Navajo Nation for our Power Up scholarship program. It's a 6-week competition at the school where they learn about clean energy, high voltage transmission, energy creation, and the winners at the end are eligible for scholarships, as well as Goal Zero products for the partners in there. We're really trying to make this a solar career focused initiative. So we see that growth. I mean, we're somewhere around 300,000 clean energy professionals right now, and over the next 10 years, that's going to triple to over 1 million. So it's really important to get to the root. And our communities, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and get the information in people's hands so that they're able to make good choices for their career futures. And really, it starts very early on, and we want to have these communities that we're working in. I mean, we're in rural Alabama. Devin Mackey is a huge proponent and supporter there. He's done work with some local schools, and is going to help bring that Power Up program to Alabama as well. I mean, what we really want to see is we're investing long-term in these communities, because we want these communities to be leaders in the clean energy transition. And they're able to do that working with us. I mean, everywhere we go, our goal is to have 80% local labor. So we have the benefit of, in rural areas where solar farms are often installed, that we can recruit very diversely and be able to use the community and work with them to both build our project and give back. Many of our superintendents will go and help the neighbors of the farms to do whatever they need done. We practice and preach to be a good neighbor.
I love it. So for SOLV Energy, diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't just about hiring. It's about that too, but really it's a more holistic approach to how you can promote and support young professionals, or even before that, kids in school, give them opportunities to explore renewable energy, maybe STEM programs, et cetera, so that the next generation of folks coming into the industry can be more diverse, versus just trying to hire women for the sake of hiring women.
Absolutely.
I love it.
It's a holistic approach. I mean, like you said, you can't just hire for the sake of hiring. It's about the community.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Really impressed with what SOLV Energy has done. I wasn't aware of all this. So that's, again, really impressive. So
And
I,
maybe I'll have to admit that I wasn't aware of all of this either. I reached out to many team members, and I mentioned before you started recording that I got 6 or 7 pages of notes. So I feel sorry you see me glancing down at them. I wish there was more time that I could share all of this, because there's much more that we're doing, and I'm blown away by my team members and their commitment to this. You know, Jen Hirschman with CSR has been an incredible leader in all of this, and really it comes from the top. Our CEO George Hirschman has been supportive and a major driving force behind many of these initiatives we're working on. And then, you know, to the hiring aspect, you've had conversations with Shalonda Dwight, and she's incredible, just playing a major role to make sure we hire the most qualified people in our expanding teams. And, you know, partners like yourself at Spencer Ogden that understands our goals and the business are another critical piece of the puzzle.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so looking into the future, I'm curious from your perspective, what the opportunity is for renewable energy.
So I think that it's an incredible opportunity for renewable energy, with our transition off of traditional fuel sources and the need for clean energy sources. Goals are being set across the country by ISOs, by states, by counties, by cities, by utilities that are all going to require significant investment in renewable energy infrastructure. And I don't think that there's a single silver bullet for that. My wife, Megan Nutting, who's a senior vice president at SOLV Energy, focuses in on residential. And I think that's a major piece of the puzzle, as well as utility scale projects and battery energy storage. Tommy Jacoby leads up our battery storage team, is focused in on that aspect of our work, which is really expanding exponentially. That will allow for wireless network upgrades, which means not having to rebuild transmission lines or distribution networks by strategically placing bulk electric system devices or battery storage co-located with photovoltaic solar plants, as well as standalone storage. Those things will be able to help us really grow and improve grid resiliency and increase the overall renewable energy content on our grid.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to explore the storage, I guess, topic with you a little bit more. Will SOLV Energy also be doing storage? I don't know if we talked about that. Or are you strictly doing utility scale solar?
Yeah, we are definitely focused in on storage projects. Tucker Roberti is brought in to help support that. He's a visionary in the space and has been helping us with our approach. We have hundreds upon hundreds of megawatt hours of storage projects already booked and will be under construction the end of this year, beginning of next year. So stay tuned for more information on that. It's a really exciting time.
Great. So with energy storage creating essentially a whole new market of opportunity for projects, and then with projects comes a need for more talent, what additional challenges and opportunities do you see in SOLV Energy doing storage projects?
Yeah, so I think we previously talked about this, and you can't call storage an emerging market anymore, but it is akin to renewables back 2008. And we've got the right folks engaged and in place at our teams that know how to build utility scale power plants. And there are so many synergies with our photovoltaic teams and high voltage teams that we've got the right folks to be able to execute. We've built storage projects for years now. We've got the technical expertise. We've built a large project in Southern California early on for a major battery supplier. And we've been able to leverage that expertise to chase a lot of work this year. So we've got many hundreds of megawatt hours of storage that will be installed over the next 18 months.
Great. So I think just bringing it back to diversity, equity, and inclusion as it pertains to the talent issue. Obviously, SOLV Energy is doing a lot in the present, which should have future results for the industry and for SOLV. But I'm curious, what your perspective is on other organizations in the industry. You're an EPC and O&M subcontractor, so you get to work with a lot of different developers and other subcontractors in the industry. Do you think other companies are making the same efforts?
I'm not sure. I think they should be. I think that these efforts really need to be taken seriously because, quite frankly, if your hiring process isn't diverse, you're going to be left behind. With many of the communities we're working in becoming more diverse and previous majorities becoming minorities, you're going to go backwards if you don't push for more equitable hiring processes. Without going to diverse sources, labor pool stagnates and just won't grow as efficiently.
Yeah, and I think to kind of piggyback on my next question, then, what do you think is the impact of having a diverse team?
Well, the synergies that exist there are really what it's all about. It's incredible to see new problems solved in new ways. The different backgrounds and different experiences that these diverse folks bring to the table really create a new level of efficiency within the teams. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I couldn't agree more. Taking into consideration that you see diversity as a critical part of success for your team, what are you doing internally to promote diversity?
I'd say make sure your hiring panels are diverse. If the same people are always on your hiring committees, you'll hire the same people. You need to promote the success of diverse team members and include them in the process.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's probably a practice that isn't normalized in the industry, and a lot of times people like to hire people like them. So
Yeah,
if you have a bunch of white men in the room,
yeah.
Well, that wraps up all the questions that I have for you today, Taylor. I want to thank you for joining me on my soapbox, for sharing your background, and really just for having an honest dialogue with me about your perspective on the state of diversity in renewables. And before we close out, I want to run a segment with you that I run with my other guests called What's in It for Me. So I want to know from your perspective why someone should consider joining SOLV Energy.
It's because of our people. I mean, the teams that we have here are amazing. If you want a promising, just exciting career, then SOLV Energy is the place for you to come. I mean, this has been a hell of a ride for me. And I am so excited for each new team member that comes on, because this is just the best company you could possibly work for. We really promote good energy from within, and it's something that I think you'll enjoy. So come on aboard.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. I can tell you from my own personal experience working with you for the past 2 years that everything that you said here is so genuine, and you live it every day, which isn't always the case with managers and with companies. So if everyone at SOLV is anything like you, then I think it would be a wonderful place to work.
Thanks, Mindy. I really appreciate all your help over the years.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Taylor. It's been really great to hear from you today about SOLV Energy and your personal commitments and contributions to promoting diversity in your company and in the industry. Thank you.
Thanks.